Fucking bet against me. Bet against me. Tell me it's not going to happen. Tell me it's going to fail. I love it. I love every minute of it.
Hello, Dexter?
Greatest mobile podcast on Spotify. Talking detour diaries, man, no need to lie, but a trucker's life is really underrated. Most of our stories go into the waste bin. We hit the road, embracing the community, talking to people about their lives, inspiring unity, from the highs to the lows and the trials that we face. Detour diaries, man, we're leaving our trace.
Good morning, and thank you for joining me in this 10th chapter of the Detour Diaries. My name is Mike, and I am the host of the self-proclaimed greatest mobile podcast on Spotify. I hope your weekends were all good. I hope you guys are rested. I hope you're feeling ready to tackle your week. And man, like the last 2 weeks have just been like a whirlwind of emotion for me. Like lots of ups, and and then some real life stuff that have, kind of taken me back down. And it's just been a lot to deal with mentally. So, today we're gonna be talking about one of the hardest jobs. We're gonna talk about one of the hardest jobs in the logistics industry that I think often goes unnoticed and in a lot of ways even more unappreciated than us as truck drivers. And we're gonna get into that. But before I do, I wanted to say, if you're in the Metro Detroit area, if you're listening in the Metro Detroit area, if you're driving through the Metro Detroit area, there is a great little bakery in Allen Park called Maze. They have, I'm going to call it, the best carrot cake I've ever had in my life. Anybody that I talk to about restaurants or things like that, I mention Maze. You got to go check out Maze. They're when our little guy was turning 3, we had ordered a cake from a bakery, and the bakery actually closed before we were supposed to pick the cake up. And the day of his birthday party, we went to go pick the cake up, and nobody was there. Nothing was even in the building anymore. So we rolled down the road, and we actually found Maze and told them what had happened, and she was able to get us a cake together, and with the matching the theme of the birthday party for little guy, and it was great. And so now anytime that we need any kind of sweet treats or any kind of snacks like that, we go down there and we see them. They're good people. Her husband's name is Adam. So May and Adam go down there in downtown Allen Park and pay them a visit. So I was thinking about the different types of jobs in the industry, and while I've done a few, and my resume reads very long, I've never been a dispatcher. Ever. He has a long resume. He job hops. I don't necessarily job hop, and it's not because I don't want to do that work anymore. It's because my brain needs more. I've learned a lot of different things in trucking from a lot of different people, and I didn't learn that by staying at the same place. And I'm not saying that every person is the same way. What I'm saying is for me, this has led me to is understanding trucking from more than one mindset. I've met people from all walks of life. I've interacted, I've worked for and under all types of different people. And what I've taken away from that, I believe, is more valuable than what my resume looks like. You know what I mean? So back to dispatchers, and I wanted to talk about them for a while. They just don't get enough credit where credit should be due. Yeah, there's bad dispatchers, there's bad drivers, there's bad managers, there's bad owners. There's exceptions to the rule. What I'm going to say about dispatchers and drivers, though, is that it's a very harmonious relationship. A lot of trucking is give and take, and the relationship with your dispatcher is no different. You do for them, they do for you. It's hard to see what it is we do for them as a driver, but when you strip it away, they work their minds and sanity to the limits to find X amount of drivers. We're going to say 60, to find 60 drivers loads every single day and to keep them moving, make sure their hours of service are good, because let's be honest, not everybody knows how to do that. Not everybody knows how to manage their clock well. Not everybody was taught how to manage their clock well. But there is a lot of credit that should be given to these dispatchers that just isn't being done. And I know that there's a lot of jobs like that. Nursing, for example, was a very thankless job up until COVID. That's when nurses started, really stepping into the light and, they do have a really tough job. Yeah, they've had a tough job for a very long time. They have. So going into this, I have 3 key components that I believe are needed for any relationship to work. And I do mean any. If it's a working relationship, if it's a friendship, if it's an intimate relationship, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, I believe that these 3 things need to be present. And they are communication, appreciation, and respect. If you can't communicate needs and wants to the person that you need and want things from, or need or want things from, then how are they supposed to know what it is you need or want? A breakdown in communication in any dynamic will be inevitably, if it's not resolved, the breakdown to that relationship. Any one of these 3 things, communication, appreciation, or respect, in my mind, and again, I am not a degree holder in any way. These are just my beliefs. So these are things that I do, and these are the things that I try to live by. If there's no appreciation, and I'm sorry, when it comes to appreciation, it's not appreciation for your job. It's the appreciation for your dispatcher, because they do have 60 drivers that they need to take care of, and they do have their stressors from their job. We have a lot, but this isn't a competition. Life's not a competition. Life's saying, yeah, your job sucks, man. I'm sorry. Mine sucks too, but yours sucks too, right? We can say that. It doesn't have to be your job sucks, but mine's worse because of this. It doesn't have to be that. You can literally just talk and, wow, that really sucks. Empathize. Yeah, I can see that. You don't have to know what their job is to be able to empathize with somebody telling you that their day sucks. Just listen. They have bosses and coworkers also that they're trying to navigate while they're trying to make sure that 60 other personalities and feelings are intact, because we often allow our feelings to take hold and get rid of logic. But if you take the time to listen to the person that moves your freight, that moves your truck, that assigns you the load, it's pretty clear crap that they go through on a regular basis. Just talk to them. Just talk to them. Go out of your way to do something extra. It can go a long way. What can we do extra as truck drivers for our dispatchers? It's a hard thing to try and find, and you actually got to put some thought into it. But if you put just a little bit into it, if your dispatcher's giving you a short load that doesn't have a whole lot of loaded miles on it, and you were expecting, that's on you, but you were expecting something bigger, something more, a little bit longer, a little bit further, and then you get angry about it. But what you don't realize is that dispatcher gave you that little short one so that the next 3 ones you got would be monster loads. Right? But you seem unappreciative by complaining about that small one because you don't know that he's lined you up or she's lined you up. The point is, just relax a little bit, show some appreciation for the person that's giving you the miles, that's giving you the essentially money, right? That's giving you the money for you to be able to make a living. So trucking is it's give to get, right? Give a little bit to get a little bit. And the problem is when greed gets in the way, or entitlement, or expectations. Expectations will always lead you to disappointment. Guaranteed 100% all the time. Expectations will always lead you to disappointment. If you expect something and then you get the opposite of that expectation, you're going to be really disappointed. If we remove expectation, we're going to find out that throughout life, we'll be less disappointed. The last thing is respect. 100%. You have to be able to appreciate what your dispatcher is doing for you in order for you to respect how hard they are working. If you do not respect them, it will not be harmonious. Remember, a harmonious relationship between driver and dispatcher is what's needed to keep that truck running, to keep that driver earning. It's what's needed. You may go around talking to your significant other like they're modern trash, but they're tied to you. These people are not tied to you. They don't owe you anything. And respect is earned. It's not given through tenure, title, or anything else, in my opinion. You need to earn that. Have some integrity. Drivers, have some integrity. Do what you say you're going to do. If you have the hours to get a load somewhere on time and you didn't because of your inability to drive, why should that dispatcher trust you again to get something else on time? A hotshot load, a brokered load, whatever it may be. If it was a personal relationship where it was only a one-way street, how long would you actually stay? How grateful would you be? It's about balance. It's about being human. They're literally just another person trying to skate through this crazy-ass world we call life. And honestly, this is applicable in all walks of life, in my opinion. It takes a lot to put yourself in someone else's scenario empathically, but when you do, you come up with a lot of answers without asking a lot of questions. So, communication, be able to communicate with your dispatcher. Make sure that your dispatcher can communicate with you. Honestly, my dispatcher and I, we had our month-long acclimation period where I had to learn how he dispatches. He had to learn how I like to run. We talked. We figured it out. We ironed it out. And him and I moved freight. Great. We don't have any qualms. None. So learn to communicate with your dispatcher. If your dispatcher is not communicating with you, communicate that with them. With them. Don't communicate it with somebody else. Communicate it with them. If you feel like your dispatcher is not appreciating you, let them communicate that with them. Facts, not feelings. Communicate that to them with facts. What it is you need. If your dispatcher is not respecting you, are you respecting your dispatcher? You get what you give. If you're walking through life and MFing everybody in the world, then you're probably walking through life getting MF'd by everybody in the world. If you have a good dispatcher, a great dispatcher, thank him. Thank him by doing the loads and getting the loads there on time. Thank him by saying yes to that small crap you don't actually want to run that's probably going to put you in a hole for that run, but it's just a run. Saying yes to that one may open up 10 other ones that'll be way more lucrative. You just never know. So Jamie, thank you. I appreciate the hell out of you. I know I tell you all the time, but I'm telling you right now, I appreciate everything that you do. Let's move as much freight as humanly possible and legal. And it's important that I notice your hard work on days that you're not even there. So genuinely, thank you very much. One of the things in recent news is the closing of Yellow Freight. YRC, whatever it may be that you know it as. And it's kind of wild that I put out that podcast a few weeks ago regarding union versus non-union. It got some pretty decent feedback on Spotify, poll suggesting that majority ruled with me in favor of no union, but I wanted to bring light to the recent shutdown of Yellow after a $700 million buyout during the pandemic. 3 years later, almost to the date. So that I'm not paraphrasing anything that I quote will be from the New York Times. I'm actually just going to read the whole article to the best of my ability. So maybe that people who are listeners that aren't in the trucking industry have a better idea of what's going on or what happened. So quote Jason Rappaport from the New York Times, the Yellow trucking company that received $700 million pandemic loan from the federal government notified staff that it was shutting down and laying off employees at all of its locations. The move comes ahead of an expected bankruptcy filing by Yellow in the coming days. The closure of the company would mean that the loss of approximately 30,000 jobs and mark the end of a business that just 3 years ago was deemed so critical to the nation's supply chains that it warranted a federal bailout. The company is shutting down its regular operations on July 28, 2023, closing and or laying off employees at all of its locations, including yours, the company said in a memo that was reviewed by the New York Times. Yellow has been locked in protracted labor negotiations with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters over a new contract that the company has said is essential to its ability to move forward with a reconstruction plan. So what I heard was no compromise, and no one's listening to the other person, to the other side. Everyone's talking, no one's listening. Nobody wants to give to get. You have to give to get. As of the end of March, Yellow's outstanding debt was at $1.5 billion, including about $730 million of that owed to the federal government. Yellow has paid approximately $66 million in interest on the loan, but it has repaid just $230 of their principal owed on the loan, which comes due next year. Yellow is one of the largest freight trucking companies in the United States, and its downfall could have a ripple effect across the nation's supply chain. Its impending bankruptcy comes days after the United Parcel Service reached an agreement with union representation. More than 325,000 of its workers averting a strike, an instance where a union does work. It can work. I'm not saying they're all bad. They're not all bad. And they do have a place, as long as that place is from both sides about the workers. That's more of what needs to happen, I guess. I want to know what they gave up. They averted a strike. I want to know what they gave up. So if anybody's listening that works for UPS, please tell me what you gave up. What's the new contract look like? Yellow's management and union negotiators have been trying to reach an agreement over wages and other benefits, but failed to clinch a deal. The fate of Yellow's assets is not yet clear. In 2020, the Trump administration, which had ties to the company and its executives, agreed to give the firm a pandemic relief loan in exchange for the federal government assuming a 30% equity stake in the company. I'm sorry, what? What? Did you guys know this? Like, did you know this? Did you know? I know that the pandemic loan was out there and publicly out there, but did you know that the federal government, the IRS, actually has a 30% stake in a company? I had no idea. This isn't Shark Tank, right? You can't go pitch your idea to the IRS and just, offer them a stake in your company. Can I do that? When have we ever given the federal government control over a company like that? I mean, I know it happens all the time. I know that. But when it's never been done in history, ever. All right, moving on. Yellow said that last month that it sought the assistance of the Biden administration in brokering a deal with the union. The White House had no comment this week on the situation. A company official said on Thursday that Yellow was preparing... Now, let's go back to that. Yellow said last month that it sought the assistance of the Biden administration in brokering a deal with the union. So now we're like, oh, Biden's anti-union. The Democratic Party is anti-union. What? If pro-union means giving the IRS 30% of like every company out there, I mean, look where it landed them. Yellow, why would you give the IRS 30% stake of your company? Look what they're doing to this country. Sometimes things are painted in a light by mainstream media that makes it seem like it's something else. And you have to see beyond or between that fog. It's already said that the Trump administration has ties to Yellow Freight, right? It's already said that. And then it says that it reached out for the Biden administration. Well, but at the end of the day, you got to read between the fog for yourself. You got to be a critical thinker. A company official said on Thursday that Yellow was preparing for a range of contingencies, but that talks with the union are continuing on Friday. A spokeswoman for the company declined to comment on the firm's future. The Teamsters warned on Friday in a letter to local unions representing Yellow workers that the likelihood of the company's survival was increasingly bleak. We recommend that all Yellow employees who have personal belongings and tools at the terminal should take them home today. That was a co-chair, John A. Murphy of the Teamsters Freight Industry Negotiating Committee. As Yellow's bankruptcy became more likely this week, shippers were diverting freight away from its network and its stock price plunged. Analysts at the financial services firm Stephens estimated that the company could be burning through as much as $10 million in cash per day. In a note to clients, the analyst said that the lost business and the threat of strike had the trucking company mortally wounded and that the firm could reach the end of the road. Financial woes at Yellow, which previously went by the name YRC Worldwide, have been building for years. In July 2020, the Treasury Department announced it was giving a $700 million loan to the trucking company, helping to stay afloat. But the loan immediately raised questions, in part because the firm was struggling financially and was being sued by the Justice Department over claims that it had defrauded the federal government for a 7-year period. The company ultimately agreed to pay $6.85 million to resolve those allegations. I am not a political person by nature, but the more I put my ear to the ground, a lot of the footsteps seen, man. I'm also not a registered voter, so this is not a political soapbox. I might actually become one this year. The more I'm doing the things that I'm doing now, the more I see a need to have my ear to the ground. So my questions for you guys are, I guess still this. Are your thoughts on union and the trucking industry now still the same? You had two examples of good and bad with UPS and then Yellow. Do we see that pro-union is now, pro-union means capitalism in the federal government? This is not how business is done. 30% stake? I get a 30% markup on the pandemic loan. Whatever. But a 30% stake always? There's no way. This has to stop. It has to stop. We cannot mix and mingle capitalism and government. Not in this country. This is not a soapbox. I'm not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. It's not a Trump bashing article. I didn't even know about the Trump stuff until I read the article. But I found it important because of what we do, who we work for, and where our money goes. A bailout through taxpayer money to a company that was being sued by the federal government through taxpayer money, who then turns around and gives 30% of their company over the last 3 years to the IRS for profit to help clear their debt, no doubt. But it ended up just putting them further underwater. These are things that this is my livelihood. This is my family's livelihood. This is a lot of people's families' livelihood. So just take a look at what government meddling has done. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this chapter of the Detour Diaries. The amount of support from all of you has been highly encouraging, and it pushes me to want to do more each and every week. Honestly. I know there have been ideas that my friends have thrown out for different talking points, and I promise I'm going to try to get to them. I just want to give as much information on them as I can and put a lot of thought into it. This is easily my most favorite passion project I've ever done. I mean, easily. And it really stems from being able to connect with all of you. I like to talk to people. I like to connect to people. I like to hear stories. I haven't recorded any of them, and I'm regretful of that, but I've talked to so many different people since I've been out here, and I've interacted and connected with so many different people. A Navy SEAL veteran yesterday, and anyway, I'm so thankful that I'm able to get out there and do that, because that part of the job is what makes this job, for me, very enjoyable. So thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you have done. Your guys' support means everything to me. Truly, everything. Remember, we are on Facebook under Detour Diaries. We are not that Polish couple from Warsaw, so please search further. We are also on Twitter, or X as it's called now, @_Detour Diaries. And our Discord link is on both of those platforms. So please continue to share, like, follow, and until next time, stay safe, drivers.
This has been another pit stop on the Detour Diaries.